News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Erica Herskowitz. Hopes the U.S. and Iran are headed back to the negotiating table drove stocks to all-time highs today. A blowout forecast from Intel and the DOJ ending its criminal probe into Fed Chair Jerome Powell also helped. The Dow fell 80 points, losing 0.1%, but the Nasdaq set a fresh record high, adding 398 points, or 1.6%. The S&P also hit a new record of 57 points, or 0.8%. The 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.30%. The 2-year Treasury yield is at 3.78%. And Brent crude trading at nearly $106 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate around $95 a barrel. And thanks to unfettered demand for AI, shares of Nvidia rose 4.3% today to a new all-time high, topping a valuation of $5 trillion, first reached in October of last year. The Justice Department is ending its investigation into building renovation cost overruns by the Fed, potentially clearing a path to confirm Kevin Warsh. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says she expects a report soon from the Fed's Office of Inspector General, which is scrutinizing the cost overruns, and noted that she will not hesitate to restart a criminal investigation if the facts warrant it. To that end, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters today the Fed case is not necessarily dropped.
As you saw, Judge Jeanine Pirro, or former Judge Jeanine, U.S. Attorney Jeanine now, put out a statement saying that the case is not necessarily dropped. It's just being moved over to the Inspector General, who has critical tools at their disposal to continue to look into the financial mismanagement at the Fed.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. U.S. Representative French Hill says dropping the probe is a step in the right direction.
It's something that I felt should be done for a number of weeks. I said back on January 12th, I felt like the accusation that Chairman Powell had committed some sort of crime connected with the building construction or his testimony about it was a distraction, and that it would delay President Trump in the selection of a high-quality new chair for the Fed and the important economic policy that should be coordinated between the Fed, the U.S. Treasury, the legislative branch. So it's a step in the right direction. I applaud it. I hope it comes to pass. And I hope that then facilitates the prompt confirmation of Kevin Warsh.
U.S. Representative French Hill. The move likely removes the major obstacle to Warsh's confirmation, but its impact is unclear, with some lawmakers and experts questioning whether it will be enough to resolve the issue and allow Powell to leave the Fed. President Trump will be sending 2 envoys for peace talks with Iran and Pakistan. However, Tehran is giving off a more pessimistic tone on the prospect of further negotiations. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner will reportedly participate in talks this weekend with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who said the purpose of his travel to Islamabad is to coordinate with partners on bilateral matters and consult on regional developments. And that's pouring cold water on speculation that the U.S. and Iran were close to a second round of negotiations. Vice President J.D. Vance, the lead negotiator for the U.S., is currently not expected to join the delegation, but will reportedly be on standby. Meanwhile, the double blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. blockade is getting even bigger.
Not only is the blockade growing, in fact, a second aircraft carrier will join the blockade in just a few days, but this growing blockade is also gone global.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking at a Pentagon news conference this morning, also continued to criticize European and Asian countries for relying on the U.S. to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In his words, quote, "The time for free riding is over." And at the same time, Iran continues to load millions of barrels of oil onto supertankers, an activity that will only become increasingly difficult if the U.S. keeps up a blockade on Tehran's shipping. Meanwhile, Intel shares soared as much as 28% today, gaining 81% this year and eclipsing the dot-com era record high after the company delivered a sales forecast that shattered Wall Street's expectations. Matthew Bloxham covers tech for Bloomberg Intelligence.
It's been a long time coming, but it's a pretty quick pace. Obviously, really good revenue for the quarter they reported, and the forward guide as much as 14% ahead of market expectations. And what's going on here is that as AI shifts from the kind of training environment to the kind of actual deployment or the inference environment, we're finding that there's a lot more demand for the type of CPU, the kind of general purpose compute technology that Intel's always been famous for. So it's kind of a bit of an old school revival, if you like, of the technology that they've always been well known for deploying.
Matt Bloxham with Bloomberg Intelligence. U.S. consumer sentiment fell this month to a record low, reflecting worries around the economic fallout from the Iran war. The University of Michigan's final April sentiment index shows consumers expect prices to rise at an annual rate of 4.7% over the next year, up from 3.8% back in March. Survey Director Joanne Shu on Bloomberg Radio.
In terms of what's going on in the Middle East, I don't think consumers are going to be really moved by developments on the military front or the diplomatic front. What they're really looking at are a lifting of the supply constraints, shipping constraints in the Middle East, and some relief when it comes to energy prices.
University of Michigan Survey Director Joanne Shu. The absence of a permanent deal to end the war is keeping uncertainty elevated for consumers and weighing on the outlook. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Erica Herskowitz, and this is Bloomberg.